So I had to do this old school because we are back in North Carolina. As you can see, this is our old set here. We just flew in from Austin. And Max, I want to tell you, not only is Bitcoin on the crab, as Max always says, is Bitcoin's on the crab. What do you mean when you say that, by the way?
Well, it's taken from that show Deadliest Catch, isn't it? Which is one of my favorite shows. And they always say, like, 300 miles from Dutch Harbor, the time bandit is on the crab. And that some good television is about to happen as they chase after that crab. And so Bitcoin, it's on the crab and it's moving higher. I think it's over 24,000 recently within the last few weeks. It got to like 24,500. This to me is going to be a period of separation and differentiation because Gary Gensler over at the SEC has now thrown down the gauntlet. He's gone scorched earth on everything except Bitcoin. And we see it now, I think, in the prices, if I make that bold statement.
You can make that bold statement. I look pretty bold in all of this red. And we're going to talk about Gary Gensler. We're going to talk about BUSD. We're going to talk about these stable coins. We're going to talk about the situation out there. How does everything sound? Because you know what? The thing is when you have people doing things for you, i.e. like the audio and the camera and the lights, unlike in the 2 years during lockdown when Max and I were just here, like I forgot how to connect everything.
Yeah.
And I've been totally lost here. And a lot of our equipment is in El Salvador. And the thing as well is that the hardware now is software, right? Everything is software. So I have this Focusrite thing that, the monitor for the audio that I have to put the audio through there to go to the. Anyway, I brought the one I usually use. It's in El Salvador, and this is a brand new one that I had ordered. It's hardware. It's a device, but you know what? Like it wouldn't let me use the same device I use all the time without registering that and using that specific one. Like I had to go through all of the YouTube, Ecamm Live, everything, like to reprogram my computer to recognize that one as well. So
Well, we live in an age where there is no accumulated wisdom. Nobody really knows how to do anything for the reason that you point out here. It's all software, and the software is constantly being changed and upgraded, and you constantly have to reinstall it. So even if you have a piece of hardware and you know how to work it, it's really useless if you don't have the upgrade date on the software, which would require a reinstallation, and the whole process is all over again. And think about it. It was only 50 or 60 years ago. If you bought a blender, you could turn it on and make a milkshake. If you bought a hammer, you could use it to nail in a nail. Things, hardware stuff that you purchased, you'd have a board, of hardware, a saw, a hammer, nails, and you could build stuff and that stuff would last. And it was a chair and it was a table and you could pass it on to future generations. Here, you have stuff, you have hardware, you have tools, but within 3 months, unless you reinstall new software, they're completely useless. They get bricked. You have nothing to pass on to your future generations. This segues into this idea of the right to repair, right? You have the right to repair, which is being taken away from us, particularly men who like to take things apart and repair them. But that's being taken away, even with things as utilitarian as a John Deere tractor, right? It comes with software and it comes with features that are locked behind intellectually protected boxes that cannot be opened. So if something goes wrong, you have to bring in a service person. You have to get a new tractor. So it adds to the cost. It disenfranchises the farmer or the person using that tool. And, it goes on from there. I had a third point, which I forgot, but nevertheless, 2 out of 3 is not bad.
I was laughing because I remember the last episode we were telling people that they complain and they have the first 2 minutes to complain.
Yeah, I'm complaining.
So we have our 2 minutes. We're almost up with our 2 minutes of complaints. But anyway, also I have that Stream Deck thing, and that's in El Salvador. So I didn't bring it with me. So I have to do it old school and go up there and like stop and start. There's always something as well. Like I had to find a specific sort of I don't know. There's all these cables, and if you don't have the exact right one, like all of the other equipment doesn't matter
Yeah,
if
again,
just
think,
one cable.
20 years ago, there was a plug. You plug it into the wall and it
Yeah.
works all of your devices, your washing machine, your sewing machine, your electric light bulbs, your lawnmower. They plug
Yes.
it in and it all works. Here, of
Oh,
course, Apple Computer comes up with a new plug-in and a new device, and they don't match up and they don't go work together. So you have to buy all new cables and you have to buy all new ports. And here's a laptop. Actually, there's no port for a mic for earphones, right? So earphones, you would think
airphones.
earphones you would want to have to be able to plug in with a wire. I mean, you could wear the wireless earphones, but of course you'd need a software upgrade. But you just want to plug in, let's say, earphones. Oh, guess what? My laptop no longer has the jack for the earphones. I have to get an accessory and plug it into where I would plug it into the wall. And then that has a myriad of little outlets, and I can plug it into there. So now I'm carrying an extra jack, which of course I lose. And then I can't use an earphone. So it forces me to talk to people, which I hate to do because I'm not interested in them. And I'd rather
And
just
yet you're
put,
here,
yeah, but
right?
I'm not, yeah, it's so
Yeah.
ironic. I mean, its irony is so rich. I'm swimming in irony right now.
Anyway, like, of course, everybody tunes in to this podcast because the title is Microdosing Bitcoin on the Crab. And here they are, like, we turned in, and these boomers are complaining about this equipment, this Focusrite, and all this stuff. So.
Well, you don't always get what you need, but you always have what you are. I just made that up and it makes no sense. And that's unique to this show. But let's talk about microdosing on the crab with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
As I've been saying, as Stacy has been saying,
Yeah.
as people who are in the know have been saying,
Yeah.
don't look at the price, look at the hash rate. The hash rate's busting loose. It's above 300 quintillion calculations per second.
All-time high. $24,135.97 I have right here on CoinGecko, up 8.4%. That's Bitcoin right now. That is Bitcoin. Of course, this is dragging up all the shit coins with it too, by the way. So that's not necessarily a good sign. But I wonder, Gary Gensler is going after all these tokens and coins and yield products. And like, you would think there's no it's very obvious there's no reason for all of these other coins to exist, right? Because Bitcoin just works. Bitcoin is so simple. Like Max and I have just been complaining for the last 4 minutes about how things used to just be simple. All those other Rube Goldberg machines of blockchains, they don't work. And, they work well in enriching a handful of dudes, mostly dudes who pre-mine these tokens and push them on the population with these fantastical promises. But if you don't have that one plug that makes it all work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, if you throw a bowling ball into a bucket full of fly poop, the aggregate rise in fly poopedness would be commensurate with the density of the bowling ball. And with Bitcoin going higher, it's going to take the fly poop with it. I mean, that's all there is to it. But who is buying and selling the fly poop? The shit coins, the altcoins. They're the same people who are on 4chan. The people who have 3 or 4 hours of free time. They're chatting with people who knows where, who knows about what. They see something like amalgamated poop coin trading for 50 cents on the an exchange that's on the dark side of the moon, and they have $5 to their name, and they're going to try to make $6. And then if they make $1, they're going to go right down to the crack house and buy some crack. And that's pretty much the entire shitcoin market in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, right. So, like I said, we're back from Austin. We just arrived. We took an early morning flight, so we've been up since 4. Yes. I think Max just didn't even bother going to sleep because anytime, I went to bed at like midnight, and then I woke up.
I had a problem. I was at the Marriott Hotel in Austin, and I couldn't sleep. And I went down to the lobby, and, I was kind of in my sleeping clothes, the sleeping outfit. And the guy came over to me and assumed I was homeless, and they took me out to the street. So I was being thrown out of the hotel at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had to, really get work. I was incoherent because I was had no sleep, and they were like, "Look, man, you got to go back to the shelter or where the fuck you came from." And it took me like 15 minutes to get back into the hotel, and back to bed.
This is gonna. I should rename it now. I can get up and rename this "Microdosing Max Kaiser's Many Many Complaints," because boomers really, genuinely, you guys seem to have so many complaints. Like Gen X, like we are just quiet sort of people. Nobody pays attention to us. You know why they don't pay attention to us? Because we shut the fuck up. We don't talk like you. We don't complain like you. We're not like all, Larry David about like neuroses about everything.
Yeah,
and then
sure.
the generation below us has neuroses about all their body parts they want cut off,
Yeah.
and they want to be turned into avatars, and just like I don't know, we're just quiet. Like,
So the Gen X is the new quiet generation.
we're the middle. We're the middle generation of generations.
Isn't the great generation also known as the quiet generation, or
Yeah, well, they're just quiet. They're silent.
the silent generation?
They're silent.
Mhm.
We're quiet because nobody pays attention to us.
Except for Kurt Cobain. I mean, he's a Gen Xer, and he made a big bang. And Nirvana was a defining group of that era, and we miss Kurt dearly. And I'm complaining because
Yeah.
we would love to have Kurt make some more records, but he had to go. He left. Courtney Love turned
Oh
out
my
to
God.
be, she's okay. Hole, her group. They have some great songs.
I
think
introduced you to Hole.
you did. You introduced me to Courtney Love and Hole, and my I've never been the same. And I think I immediately dismissed Courtney Love.
Yes.
Because
you didn't listen to her music.
I didn't listen. And then when I just sit back and turned it on, and Hole is great. And
somebody says they can't wait to get to your age because you make it look fun. Yeah, dementia, like onset of dementia is really fun. The early days when you're slipping in and out of it, it's kind of fun.
It is kind of fun. I mean, you do get cut some slack at the airport when you try to get into a fist fight with the
Max, you've done that since day one. I've never seen you
I've been
not
old.
get
You met me. I was already in my 40s.
Wow.
Now I'm in my 60s.
Anyway, Nirvana in utero. Yeah. So we were in we were in El Salvador, but then we went from El Salvador to Texas, and then we went to Austin. And the thing is, first of all, I ate a lot of steak because the steak quality in El Salvador. I'm never gonna say anything bad about El Salvador, but I'll just say Texas has better steak. Okay.
Okay, so you're not complaining. You're not complaining about the steak in El Salvador.
You're
praising the steak in Austin.
I'm praising the steak
Right.
in Texas.
Okay.
Yes. So it is mighty delicious. We were there, for 3 days maybe in total, and I had about 6 or 7 steaks by the end of it.
You had steak and eggs,
Steak and eggs.
sandwich for lunch,
Yeah.
T-bone for dinner. It's like steak three
I didn't have
times a day.
T-bone. I had ribeye.
Ribeye.
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't know all the various cuts of beef and steak and the tomahawks. I'll just get a hamburger, to tell you the truth. I like a good hamburger. I'll eat a Wagyu hamburger. I don't need, to go through all the steak. I'll just have a hamburger.
All the cutting, like when you get to that age, it's like,
oh yeah, it's too much work. Give me a hamburger with some French fries. Okay, that's what I'd like.
Yeah, that's the difference between me and you. So a hamburger is like proof of steak, and a steak is like proof of work, because you got to work at the steak. You actually got to cut it. You got to cut it in the right direction. You like all sorts of things about cooking it properly. Like, you have to do it in cast iron. Whatever Safe Dean says, don't listen to him. He's not right about cooking in steel plates. Like
Hold on a second.
steel cast.
Look, I got his book right here.
Yeah.
Okay, and it says I happen to have this open. It says only use cast iron when cooking steak. Don't listen to Stacy.
Right.
And it's right here on page 47 in this classic book.
So anyway, I had the steak, and you know what? We were there to open a Bitcoin embassy. We're talking to the governor's office there about opening a Bitcoin embassy in Austin. And of course, it was already on our radar. It was already in our plans as soon as we opened the embassy in Lugano, that you obviously have to open one in Austin, right? Because while Lugano is gold 1.0 sort of legacy financial system, and Bitcoin is like gold 2.0, new capital markets being built in El Salvador. And there is a lot of capital in Lugano, and we're very close to many people there. Austin and Texas is where all the Bitcoin is mined. They're securing our monetary network in El Salvador. So it made natural sense that we're natural allies anyway, because of the fact that we have Bitcoin as legal tender in El Salvador. We are Bitcoin country. That, Texas provides a lot of services to us through mining Bitcoin, through all the Bitcoin core devs being there, the Lightning devs being there. So we had an amazing time. We met with so many Bitcoiners. I mean, it feels like forever ago that we were at on the first Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, we were at the Bitcoin Commons, and like 100 people showed up, and everybody was so nice. Like, Texans are really nice, right?
Yeah, really nice. And the Bitcoin Commons was great. Parker Lewis was over there, and we reconnected with him, and he's always great to talk to. And yeah, the meeting over at the state capitol with representatives from the governor's office was had, and the discussion was about the Bitcoin embassy to be opened in Austin, and this is the sister embassy to the one in Lugano. And the vision being that if I can, speak on this a little, is that the Salvadoran model, the Salvadoran model of hyper-Bitcoinization, one way to get that message out there is through these embassies, right?
Right. Well, President Bukele had called it the Alexandria model a year and a half ago when he was on stage in La Mazata north of El Zonte. Or is it west of El Zonte? I guess it would be west. So the thing is, however, do you think you just called it the Salvadoran model?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, is it going to be renamed? It's like Alexandria. There's a new Alexandria, right? There's a Salvadoran model. Or are they going to call it the Bukele model? Or like, what will this be known as in 500 years? Like the template that we're establishing of how to hyper Bitcoinize, the first mover path that we blaze. Like, what will this be called, do you think, in the future? Answer it in the comments, and just stop talking about my hair and answer the freaking question, okay?
Yeah. What are you asking
good.
me?
You look good.
Oh, yeah, I feel good.
You're not in the comments, are you?
No, that's what I assumed.
No,
Just
but what
do
you think they'll call it? I want some of your pineapple water. I'm thirsty.
Yeah.
Being up all morning.
For you. There we go.
Ew, it's just like the dregs.
I know you always leave the last 10% of whatever you're drinking. It's a unique thing.
Yeah, it is.
And I put them in the fridge, and I have them later. And
that's gross.
No, it's not gross. There's nothing wrong with the last 10% of what's in the can of a beverage. It's 99.999 exactly the same, with maybe a little saliva in there. It doesn't make it gross.
People are asking if we're going to cover the Nord Stream thing.
Sure.
We've been so busy, right? Like, really busy on a bunch of stuff, as we've been talking about this Alexandria model, establishing the template, blazing the path. It's not easy to blaze the path. Like, there's a lot of work involved in it. So it's not like we have a lot of time to dilly-dally and stupid geopolitical gossip. But, I mean, the point is, like that whole Nord Stream thing of, I guess, Seymour Hersh, his investigative journalism, lo and behold, found what like everybody knew from moment one, not even day one, like the instant it happened, everybody knew that it was the U.S. or allies, whoever did it. It happened. It wasn't Russia blowing up their own pipeline.
No.
So, yeah, we knew this from day one. The whole thing since 2016, we've gone through the looking glass. They've crossed the Rubicon, right? The elite, as they've lost control of the narrative, and they've just crossed the Rubicon. And the weird thing is, like, we out here, like, all of us can see from every single time they lie. Like, it's so obvious. Like, Seymour Hersh is very famous for uncovering the My Lai massacre back in the 70s. And that took months and months and months and months, maybe 2 years to uncover and reveal to the public in America. Now, like, as soon as these people speak, we're like, we know you're lying, like, because of social media.
Yeah. That's one excellent point, is that the institutionalization of lying, fabrication, prevarication, storytelling time by the people in power has gotten to Soviet era like pomposities, right? Nobody believed anything the Soviet leadership said if you were in the Soviet Union, and nobody in America believes a single thing anyone in Washington says or the media that covers Washington says. Not a scintilla of what comes out of anyone's mouth is believed by a majority or even a minority. You might have 5 or 6 people that are living in a dungeon somewhere might have a thought that this is not just outright lies. But I guess the question, though, is will this latest chapter in flagrant disregard of international law and conventions result in, wait for it, WW3? That's the big question. That's how we can forget it, move on. I don't mean, yeah, we don't have to dwell on it.
We're in El Salvador, so it's just you know, the trajectory, like, we've long passed each other. Like, the United States and this whole fiat fraud and, you know, the empire of debt is all, like, crashing, and in a very macabre way. I mean, empires in the past have crashed, like, with a lot of decadence and insanity and bizarre stuff. And as Max mentioned, the Soviet Union, you know, Adam Curtis covers that quite well in Hypernormalization, that everybody in the Soviet Union knew it was an entire fake economy, fake system, fake political system, fake everything, and that it would collapse. But they acted as if it wasn't about to collapse.
I was asked this question recently, you know, and my answer was that, look, you got fiat powers fighting fiat wars to try to get more fiat money in an age of Bitcoin. So the only winner is going to be Bitcoin. I mean, the legacy nation states from the old fiat world are going to fight it out for who has the most fiat money, which against Bitcoin is worth 0. It's like the Venezuelan bolivar going to war with the with the Argentinian peso, right? The result is that both are going to be even more worthless than when it started. So you have two fiat countries with fiat currencies going to into the battle, and the result is they're both and come out the other side even poorer than when they started, and their purchasing power versus Bitcoin will be substantially less. But it's inevitable, it's predictable. Bitcoin brings out the worst and the best in people. In the case of these two warring nations, it brought out the worst. In the case of El Salvador, it brought out the best. It's the magic mirror. It tells you who you really are. And for some people, it means that they're going to face a very difficult future.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's kind of weird. It's almost like being on another planet and looking at Earthlings, like, do things over there, you know, to be in El Salvador where things are getting better every day.
Mm-hmm.
And however, to see in my Twitter stream, you know, signs of, like, insanity, like, it does look like a madhouse on another planet, and that you're looking at just a surreal world out of, like, Orwell meets Star Wars meets, you know, something very bizarre.
Well, to your point, we're talking about that, all the lies that are now become commonplace. So concurrent with that are the distractions become more outlandish.
Yes.
So last week we had, 3 UFOs and
Oh,
spy balloons,
yeah.
right? So they were like,
Like,
oh, the Nord Stream 2 was such a flagrant and obvious international violation by a country that's wedged between Canada and Mexico. I won't name it. That they decided, well, the only thing we can come up with to distract people from this obvious attempt to ingratiate the military industrial complex and enrich them is to trot out the UFO possibilities. And again, people are like, oh my God, not the UFO trope again.
yeah, but we kind of pointed that out over the past. I think the first UFO thing happened like 3 years ago, maybe, and nobody paid attention to it, right? Like the Pentagon said something about UFOs. They released some videos that said we have UFOs and made of material not of this earth, and nobody paid attention. They were like, yeah, whatever, and just like that's the thing. It's like, as you point out, nobody believed the Soviet spokespeople and the government,
No.
right? And the same thing now is like nobody believes any of this stuff. I mean, it's probably a wag the dog sort of like crazy story that they got caught with something. Then there's this huge chemical explosion. Who the heck knows what that is? Like there's chemical explosions, alien balloons, Nord Stream explosion. Like there's so much stuff going on.
It's entropy, as you say, right? The
Yeah.
entropy is now reached critical failure.
It's reached critical failure. But the very unusual thing is that for me and Max anyway, is that we're in El Salvador where things are just getting better and better and more normal. Like it wasn't normal to live under gang occupation. It wasn't normal to have your politicians loot like 20% of your economy every year, and the gangs loot 30%. Like that wasn't normal, but that's all over. And so now we're like increasingly normal, and the rest of the world is increasingly bizarre.
Yeah.
And like topsy-turvy.
El Salvador becomes a safe haven.
Yes.
And a lot of people are showing up, and they realize that the economy is growing. The people are really friendly. The policy is about economic freedom, liberty, freedom, property rights.
Life, liberty, property.
Right? Life, liberty, property. The President Bukele is this really dynamic guy who is easily communicate. That fantastic statistic came out, that during so far the presidency of President Bukele, they've had in aggregate 300 days without a murder.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the previous administration that ran that country, they had, and during the entire administration of the previous administration, only 1 day without a murder. And if you go back to the previous one, they had 0 days without a murder.
So as he points out, there was 1 day without homicides in 10 years.
1 day.
One day.
And here under Bukele, they've had 300, right? And that's
in the 4 years.
In 4 years, and it's getting even better because that includes, going back 18 months or so. So now you have a population.
I suppose it would be 3.5 years.
3.5 years. And they're literally, as we've pointed out, and we've been there, and Stacy's been to these hot zones, and I've been with Stacy in these hot zones, and we're, distributing Bitcoin and things like that. We've seen people in these areas that have been war torn and gang torn. And it's literally like Victory in Europe Day. People are just like out in the street. There was a fantastic comment by a Salvadoran who very poetically said, a paraphrase here, that he suddenly has a much bigger house than he needs. And what he meant by that is that for the entire life of his kids being alive, they were afraid to go outside, and he needed a big house. But now that's so safe now to go outside, and everyone's outside partying and having block parties, that, his house is empty because everyone's outside. He said, I don't need a big house really because everyone's outside. So it was a very short bit of a very quick observation that just spoke volumes about the shift in what's going on there. So it's become a safe haven, and people are showing up literally as refugees from the United States, from Canada, from Europe, especially.
El Salvador is winning, indeed. And somebody's asking me, like, I'll move there tomorrow if they manage to get mineral water in glass bottles. But that's all we ever have is mineral water. We always have San Pellegrino in the glass
Yep,
bottles.
that's right. Go to Super Selectos, which is the biggest chain of supermarkets in El Salvador, and you can get San Pellegrino in glass
Yeah, but
bottles.
every restaurant as well.
Every
It's all,
restaurant,
yeah. So we only ever have it in glass bottles. So
Perrier in glass bottles.
I don't think we've had it in plastic.
No, I prefer
So
glass
just
bottles.
shut the fuck up.
Yeah, shut the fuck up already. But I mean, if that's the only thing holding you back, then guess what? Get on a plane today and go to El Salvador and get all the mineral water in glass bottles that your heart desires. It's plenty there for you. Just go to Super Selectos. You see me there buying my papayas, which we get papayas every day. We've become big papaya eaters. And, I've become the papaya master.
Yeah. So anyway, what are you going to say about Nord Stream? I mean, what are you going to say? What are you going to say about these alien balloons, whatever the heck they are? Like, what are you going to say, right? Like, we've already said it for the last 15 years. Like, we say it all the time. Like, we've already told you this was coming. We talked about de-dollarization, deindustrialization, dehumanization,
Population.
depopulation, destruction of their minds, like the entropy of the empire and the elite and all of their framework by which we govern ourselves has just collapsed. And all the signs were there. So like when they're tearing down statues of the founding fathers, they're tearing down like the foundation of your entire society, the fabric of the society. They're ripping apart the fabric of your society, the thing that binds you all together. No matter how many horrible things that your country has gone through, like that's the fabric of your the U.S. Constitution and the American Revolution, like they are so unique in world history of what it actually was.
I thought of an interesting metaphor. Imagine this.
L'imagine. Who's l'imagine?
L'imaginique.
L'imagine.
L'imagine. I don't know if people remember Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus.
I'm sure they've heard of it. I don't know if they still exist.
No,
but
they shut down because of
Really?
the cruelty to animals.
Oh, okay.
And the elephants protested, and they got themselves released from their jobs.
I went
At the
when I was
circus.
little.
I went also every year to Madison Square Garden to the Ringling
Oh, wow.
Brothers
You went to proper
Barnum
Ringling.
Bailey Circus.
Yeah.
And so, the way that they arrive in town is these huge trains, right? The trains show up. They've got the elephants and the giraffes and the clowns and the horses and the acrobats and the trapeze artists and the clowns. And so imagine a Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey train hurtling down the tracks, and in the opposite direction is like Dow Chemical trains laden with toxic poisonous gas, and they're both going like 200 miles an hour, and one starts on the East Coast and one starts on the West Coast, and somewhere in the middle they have this epic crash. So that is what America is. It's a bunch of clowns, elephants, and giraffes and zebras wandering around the wasteland in a toxic cloud of noxious gas, blinded and crying. And that's pretty much the scene now, being observed by aliens in balloons sent over by China. And that's the TV show. That's the news. And then there's Tucker Carlson wondering, how did this all happen?
So, I mean, I said that other empires have fallen apart in the past, and we've covered those. And, it's just a fact. And some of them do it very violently. Some do it through insanity. But, of course, the Roman Empire, the people let the barbarians in. And that's the thing. That's what I'm saying is like when the Pentagon's saying, hey, we have news for you. We've encountered some alien spacecraft made of material not of this earth. And people are like, oh, cool. Like, that'll be fun. Like, can't get any worse than Hillary Clinton, right? Like, what's it going to be? So, I mean, that's the sort of state people are like, yeah, whatever. Oh, okay, Nord Stream. Yeah, whatever. Like, okay, we might. I mean, they're openly people are calling for a nuclear war. Like, aliens are attacking us with balloons.
And what did Adam Curtis call it? Hypernormalization.
Yeah.
So the hypernormalization,
That's letting the barbarians in,
right,
essentially. That's what hypernormalization is. It's
right.
like you just don't give a fuck. You're like, whatever, who cares? It can't get any worse than it is, and just give me my fentanyl and my Biden bucks and I'm fine.
Right. There's nothing that phases anybody anymore.
No.
They're just completely lost in the virtual cloud of deception and weird toxic chemicals.
Exactly. So that this is like the end days of proof of stake.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
let them eat all the cake they
Let them
want.
eat steak. That doesn't
They're
make any
not
sense.
actually eating any
No,
steak
they're
is the
having no
thing. They're
steak.
eating a lot of cake. If
Cake.
you walk around this country, you see a lot of people eating cake. You see all the signs that they've been eating too much cake.
Mm.
But we're going to eat the actual steak.
Yeah, good point. But it's the, as you say, it's the end of the fiat money world, the end of proof of stake, right? Proof of stake is just you have the more fiat, you have the make the laws, and it gets totally corrupt. And so this is the end game. This is what happened after the money printing during lockdown went up 40%, and it just encouraged the worst of the worst. And so this is the denouement. This is the end.
This is the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
Good riddance.
Yep.
Goodbye. And we don't care. You know, we have our Bitcoin, our aliens. Those aliens can't get my private keys. I'm fine.
Have they tried?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But, you know, nobody's going to get my private keys. I don't care how many heads or eyes or whatever you have, what sort of spacecraft. I'm not giving you my private keys.
They show up with a spacecraft from material not from this earth, and little green men pop out. You're not giving them your private keys.
No.
No. If they have a quantum computer.
But actually, you know, everybody's always talking about, well, they're always saying, like, we got in a boating accident, and that's my excuse to the tax office. Like, the government itself is the one telling us all these aliens are here. So can you say, like, dude, I had 1,000 Bitcoin, but a freaking alien took me somewhere, who knows where, and they dropped me back off on Earth, and I had no Bitcoin with me.
That's genius.
They're the ones that said it.
Yeah, I think that's genius. I mean, you can say I was abducted by aliens. I was probed by them. They read my mind with their quantum computers. They stole my seed phrase. And as a result, I have no more.
And, you know, the thing that's interesting is Max and I grew up in an age of National Enquirer. And you'd go to the supermarket and there would always be all these, like, the U.S. tabloids, which are so different from the British tabloids. British tabloids are all like photos of celebrities on the beach, and they zoom in and try to find some cellulite, and they report on who's sleeping with who. And the U.S., it was always, you know, housewives being abducted by aliens.
Yeah.
And that's not there anymore, right? They the National Enquirer I was reading this week is like, it's over, right? They've broken up into 3 entities. So it makes sense. Like as soon as the National Enquirer disappears, and that was the home, like that was the go-to newspaper for aliens, obviously. And so now, like, you fucked with them by removing basically you deplatformed them. And now they're coming at us with a vengeance with these balloons. And shit.
Yeah. The alien spacecraft.
We will not be ignored,
totally
is what they're saying.
One of the biggest drop points for the National Enquirer.
Yeah.
You know, that definitely. And now you're saying that they have become so freaky here, and you've taken away their only form of amusement was reading the National Enquirer.
No. I'm saying basically what happened is we deplatformed them. And it all goes back to Trump, because the reason why National Enquirer no longer exists is something to do with Trump, their connection with Trump. And there was an investigation, and they were sued and basically broken up. So the aliens were deplatformed because that was how they communicated with their other alien friends here on Earth. So now they were not able to communicate with their you know, sleeper agents, their sleeper alien agents here on Earth. And so what they had to do was, because they were deplatformed, they had to escalate, right? They had to make sure that the news, the human news, covered them, because they needed to communicate with their alien agents here. So that's when they started sending the balloons. So they were like, you can't deplatform us. You took down the National Enquirer. Well, we cannot be ignored. We will not be ignored. They're like incels, you know. They're doing whatever it takes to jump into the consciousness.
Right. So the National Enquirer was the
Their Twitter. It was basically
their
their Twitter.
Twitter,
It's how they
for
communicated.
aliens, right?
Yeah, they communicated with each
it was
other.
for by aliens,
Yeah.
right? So then, because of they got deplatformed because of
Yeah.
their association with Trump,
Yes.
and so the National Enquirer disappeared. So now the aliens are like, you took away our newspaper, our communication that we used, and so they've angrily kind of manifested. They've come out. They're like, now we're gonna communicate in a way and that's gonna shock you.
Well, people want to be heard.
Yeah.
Like I think John F. Kennedy said something along like if you don't give people a way to have their voices heard, that's often leads to revolution because otherwise they'll make it heard in some other way. So the balloons are the alien revolution.
The balloons, right. And the John F. K. assassination foretold this because who really killed JFK? It was covered in the tabloids for years. Then the tabloids disappear and the aliens appear with the Chinese balloons, the quote unquote Chinese balloons. That's a cover story. But so with
well, obviously, because probably the aliens showed up, maybe I don't know, maybe they haven't been shut out of China. Maybe there's a National Enquirer there that the Chinese authorities have not shut it down.
Right.
So I don't know China. I know the United States, and we shut down the National Enquirer, and that was their Twitter. Their tweets were through housewives, right, who they abducted.
Right.
And then the housewife would communicate to their other, people through the National Enquirer, because the housewives could obviously speak the same language as the rest of us.
Right.
The aliens can't, but they spoke through the housewives to communicate.
So the housewives are like they're cutouts.
Those are tweets. Those are their tweets, basically.
Right. So this is before Karen became known for yelling at people in the parking lot. Yeah. She was a covert crypto alien communication device.
Yes.
Clearly. And then, well, the point is this: when you got rid of the National Enquirer, the timing is that's when they unleashed.
It seems to go together.
Right, they go together. That's your working hypothesis.
That's the sort of analysis we provide.
Right.
Here.
No, I mean
we're microdosing. Remember.
Yeah, the timing is suspect or perfect, depending on how you want to look at it.
Correlation doesn't necessarily equal causation.
Right.
But I'm just saying, some people say this is connected.
If it smells like an alien and looks like an alien, it's probably an alien.
Yeah, exactly. So but they're the barbarians at the gate of a collapsing empire. So notice
to bring it back to that. Yeah.
So nobody cares. Everybody's like, bring it on.
So they're the
Bring
Vandals.
it on. I don't care. They're the Vandals, the Visigoths,
right.
Your
aliens.
ancestors.
Right. Those are the aliens. And so they're we no
they're
longer.
One of them. Like, there are others. People don't care. They're like, bring it on. I don't care who's coming. Like,
right.
It's better than this system. Bitcoin is one of these barbarians at the gate. This is people are like, it's an exit and it says an escape hatch. It's a way out of that corrupt, decaying, entropic, falling apart, decadent, like horror show, right?
Right.
With a lot of mentally ill people, right, in charge, and you must save yourself, right? Like, you put your oxygen mask on yourself, or you welcome in the aliens. Like, you either get on the spacecraft and go, or you buy some Bitcoin. Those are your two options now. That's what I'm telling. That's what Boomer and Gen X are here to tell you, millennials and Zoomers out there. Basically, get on the spacecraft or buy some sats now. Those are the only two options you have. That's how we see it.
Right. Those are the two options. Those are the two paths. It's I either get abducted by aliens and get probed, or buy sats, get some sats, and those two. But anyway, going back to the Roman Empire, though. So the Romans came up with a lot of technologies at the time, the aqueduct and things like this, and also the Roman roads. So the Roman roads were both the way to expand the empire, but then it was also an easy way for the Vandals and the barbarians to just walk into the country. They just came over those roads that were no longer defended. Sure. It was also a way for the apostles of Christ to spread out over the empire as well. They walked those paved roads and they could fan out pretty quickly. In a couple of years, they got to quite a huge swathe of territory. So here, with the technology that we've built, which are these communication satellites technology, video technology, Zoom calls, the SETI at Home project I've talked about from the 1990s, and Bitcoin, it was at one time a way to expand the empire of debt, expand financialization, expand commodification, expand the American empire. But now those rails are being ridden by the aliens, and they're coming in over those rails. They're coming in through the radio frequencies. They're coming in through the technology. They're coming in through the internet. They're coming in through, obviously, Elon Musk is obviously an alien. Mark Zuckerberg, obviously an alien. So these folks they're coming in through the very rails that were part of the expansion are now being used for the contraction.
Well, the final end game will be the CBDC, because that's coming, and that seems obvious with a lot of the moves coming out of Gary Gensler. People, it's always that 80-20 thing, right? 80% of the population is going to welcome their CBDC overlord. They're going to love it so much. And I guarantee you, everybody who watches MSNBC is going to love it. Everybody who watches CNN is going to love it. They're all going to love it. And they're going to like chase down their neighbors who don't seemingly love it, and they'll be suspicious that you might have Bitcoin, and they're going to try to come chase you down and force you to comply.
Yep. Just like they did with the vax, right? They want neighbor against neighbor, chase down your neighbor, hang them. The Salem witch trials all over again. There'll be CBDCs. But to get back to the top of the show, you were talking about how things, everything's software, and the software has to be upgraded. It's planned obsolescence. The hardware means nothing. CBDC is planned obsolescence applied to a currency. So your CBDC, you have to spend it within a certain period of time, like 6 months, after which it expires. It's like a frequent flyer mile. It's no longer no good. And they have said already that they want to prevent people from hoarding money or saving money. Yeah. And as I say, this is the complete opposite of having a healthy economy, because you can't have capitalism without capital. You can't have capital without savers. You can't have savers without offering an interest rate. And so for years, under zero rate interest rate policies and hyper low interest rates, you had nobody really accumulating capital in its true form as a means of funding and underwriting enterprise. You had simply speculators who were expanding the pie of debt. Suddenly, as of the last year, there are certain countries that decided that they were no longer interested in having this worthless dollar become more worthless, and they went to war because they said, you know what, we got the commodities. We're going to start pricing commodities based on the actual cost of these commodities. And guess what happened to the price of food? Guess what happened to the price of energy? It's going up, and it's not transitory. The inflation is now fixed. It's now permanently on a higher plateau, and this is causing lifestyles to degrade rapidly and the quality of life to fall, which is leading to an easy target for the aliens who are coming in on those rails that we built to expand, very easily infiltrating our society and our minds and our consciousness.
Well, they might be a lot smarter than we are. So, like, we definitely have a shortage of intelligent life here. So why not bring them in? That's the way it all happens, right? That's the way it's happened.
It's a hot swap. You bring
$24,259. So we're microdosing Bitcoin on the crab. Bitcoin is on the crab. A lot of aliens, like on the emojis, they always look like crabs, right? Asteroids. They look like little crabs.
Yeah, little crabs.
So it's like weirdly the title of this episode, even though I didn't know we were
Are you talking about the crustacea or the pubic lice?
No, the crustacea.
Oh, okay.
So Bitcoin on the crab, and it's on the move. That's what it's saying. But I didn't know we were going to also talk about aliens, and aliens are often represented looking like crabs because of asteroids. Was it that game?
Yeah, those old video games.
Yeah.
The pixel art was crude, and so you end up looking like everything looked kind of crab-like.
Yeah. Well, the hero of Bitcoin, he's making a Game Boy game, and we're characters in it, and President Bukele is a character in it.
Yeah.
And Christian Guevara is a character in it.
Oh, wow. I didn't see that character. That's great.
Yeah.
He's a great character. He loves his he's a politician in El Salvador who has a great affinity for hard rock. Not they don't call it hard rock.
Heavy
It's
metal.
heavy metal rock.
But he's also, it turns out, because he tweeted Hero of Bitcoin,
Yeah.
he's also a fan of Game Boy and
Yeah.
all these
Game
pixel
Boy
art.
and all these these toys and classic games and things like that. So, but I saw it's fun art, isn't it? The old pixel art. It's like vinyl records became popular, and I see CDs are becoming popular again. So my CD collection is back in vogue, and these old Game Boy games are back in vogue, back in popular.
Madonna will never be back in vogue though with that face.
No.
So I mean, we already talked about her last week, and we have a little Eiffel Tower over there, and it made me think of that funny story. Our friend who's French, and his child is American growing up here, and he I guess showed him photos of the Eiffel Tower, like, this is where daddy's from, like Paris. And he would, every time he see a cell phone tower, he would point to it and say, Eiffel Tower. And then he went to Paris and saw the real Eiffel Tower, and he's like, he wasn't impressed with it. But he gets really excited when he sees a cell phone tower. Eiffel Tower.
I think I know why, because the father of that child is actually French.
That's what I'm saying. So if you're French, this is very contraire, right?
Contraire.
They like to be provocative. Let's say that.
Yes, it's a provocateur.
He's just being a provocative 4-year-old.
He's being
he's
a snobby little French 4-year-old. It's like, this Eiffel Tower is nothing. You should see the radio tower in my block in the suburbs. It is fantastique. This is a mere pile of iron. Gustave Eiffel connaît rien.
Max's friend Alain
Doff, he said, "Oh, Notre Dame burnt down. That's nothing. It's just a pile of rocks."
He said
cares?
It's a building. He said it's just a building.
It's rien. It's nothing.
He was just trying. It worked. I worked on you. You were shocked at him saying that. You just stared at, and we were right below the Arc de Triomphe, and you were just like, you stared at him in disgust.
I was like, you are the slimiest French fuck I've ever met in my. I don't care how many years we've been friends. You can't blaspheme Notre Dame like that, you French frog eating knucklehead.
He did. Bitcoin keeps going up. So
I think the most recent high of the cycle is around 24,400 or 20.
It's 24,290 right now.
Right, so it's knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock.
knock. This is a big FU to Gary Gensler. Basically,
fuck you, Gary.
Every time you come at the king, you best not miss. Is essentially what it is. But I don't think they're going to go after Bitcoin. They can't.
Nope.
So they're going to go after all the other ones.
I agree. And Gary said Bitcoin is untouchable. It's a commodity. He's not going to go after it. He can't go after it. Nobody can go after it. But he can go after every single other project out there, which they're going to do, and that's what they're doing. And it's a scorched earth, and that's why there's a differentiation. I think I haven't looked at the charts since we've been on air here, but it looked like that Bitcoin is breaking away from the pack, because the pack are like a bunch of deer caught in the headlights of Gary Gensler's SEC, and they're all going to get chopped up.
Well, you know what? We have to end this microdose.
Okay.
Because otherwise it becomes a macrodose.
That's right.
And I think, what do you think of my shirt? Because you know what? I bought this quite a while ago, and I tried it on once, and I was like, I think I hate this. I hate the color. But
right.
Now I'm like, well, maybe I don't hate it. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I bought you a dress in that color once about 15 years ago. It's at a Chinese.
And I never wore it.
And you were like immediately rejected it and saying, I hate that color. And I was like, and it made an impression on me. And I never, ever got you a shirt or a dress in that color ever again. And so now what I'm hearing is that you're starting to warm up to that kind of Chinese red, deep red color.
Well, maybe it's the aliens. Maybe it's the aliens and the Chinese balloons.
Yeah, things change.
Maybe they abducted me. Who knows? Like,
all
I
the
don't
time.
know. Like,
Yeah,
how did this
that's
suddenly
fine.
happen? How did I wake up today and suddenly like this silk fabric?
I like it.
Like, how did that happen? It must be an abduction. I'm going to see if the National Enquirer were here, I could go talk to them and explain what happened to me. And this is my evidence. And they would probably print it. This is like, that's conclusive. It seems like solid evidence, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
how it was.
Yeah.
That's how it was back in the day. You didn't need all of this well, I mean, the Pentagon gives us as much evidence, right? They say they shot down 3 balloons.
Right.
I read that one of them they shot down over like Lake Michigan. But it took 2 missiles. The first one missed. Who knows what happened to the missile?
Right.
And each of those missiles cost $400,000. So they're shooting $400,000 missiles.
Right.
Like you can get an AK-47 or something, right? Like a Armalite. Well, like what they could get some sort of like weapon that is just a little bit simpler.
A pea shooter.
And shoot it down.
That was all you need.
Save some money. But then they say they didn't find any of the, the debris. It's all gone. It's like 9/11 all over again.
It's enshrined. Osama bin Laden at the bottom of the ocean.
Yes.
Is now being wrapped up in the balloon boys' balloon rubber.
Yes.
And on top of next to the Titanic, which is next to the Bermuda Triangle, in this world of the Ringling Brothers train smashing into the Dow Jones chemical train and creating this dystopian nightmare of toxic gas, giraffes, clowns, and elephants wandering around in Ohio, wondering how the fuck did we get here? Well,
right.
Maybe on that note,
we're going to have to go. But I'm going to have to go like right up to the camera and figure out how to stop this. And
should I block the camera with my hand so that...
No,
that's
no.
okay.
No, that's okay.
That red shirt could be like blow out the.
Oh yeah, you
pixels.
might see down my shirt or something and see it like it might like an alien might come out and like. Ah!
That's good. Let's try. We'll do this. I'll do the effect.
No.
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 Did you do it yet? Are we off? We still on?